Hello everyone, welcome to Alexa Live. This is Coding Deep Dive, building multimodal game skills. My name is Robert McCauley. I'm a solutions architect with the Alexa Skills Kit team based in Boston. I've been on the team 3 years and I've met many of you folks at hackathons and workshops all around the world. So we're going to do a deep dive into a code sample for a game I'm developing right now. And the game is called State Games. It's a kind of a fun game using geography, like the map of the US states, where we can go from coast to coast by tracing a path across different states. And there's a few other variations with that. So we'll see how we can play it voice only, and then we'll also go into adding Alexa presentation language to bring out the screens on the Echo Show and Fire TVs that you might have. If you want to follow along, you can take a look at the code. You can download it at alexa.design/game sample. We'll get you to the code. And it's in progress. It's mostly done. So there's also a few opportunities, I think, that we can hack on. And we'll do some live coding on that during our session today. Follow me on Twitter at Rob McCauley. All right, so I'll do slides for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll jump right into the code and get hacking. Intro to APL, Alexa presentation language. So this is a way to leverage all the screens and devices that you see on the picture here. We're starting with the Echo Show, the Echo Spot, Fire TV, tablets. And we have the ability to really have full control. This is more than we had about a year ago. We had the display templates, which were kind of simplified, almost like the cards that you might remember on the phone, simple text and images. With the presentation language, as we'll see, we can really have the full palette to craft whatever kind of UI we want. Rich interactions. The screens, the Echo Show themselves have the touch on them, so you could even scroll. But most of the time, I've seen people just sort of lean back and use the screen to enhance what's voice. We also have a concept of voice first, as we'll see here. So think of playing this game with your eyes closed. It should work fine. It might help to have the screen there to see like where you're at and what the status is and what maybe some options are that you could say next. But it should also work with no screen at all, because a lot of customers still have these traditional Echo devices. So what do the screens give you? I think they really add a lot of enhancements. In the case of this game, State Games, if you're an expert on geography, if you paid attention in school and you know the names of all 50 states and can draw the map, you'll do great on this game. So think of the states here. There's a look at them. And what we can do in this game is put the map up on the screen, maybe without the names of the states. That would be too easy, I think, but just so you can remember where the borders are. Now, thinking of visuals, going back in time to about 3 years ago when the Alexa Skills Kit first came out, we always had this idea of cards. You always had the Alexa app on your phone, right? And you'd use that to set up the Wi-Fi on your device. And then whatever you said to Alexa, either echo directly or to a third-party skill, you'd probably see a card, a little summary pop up with like some text or maybe a text plus an image. Right? And people would use that for lists or directions and things like that you can take with you after the skill session's over. But they were very limited. They didn't have any links in there and not much styling. So we introduced the display templates for the Echo Show and screen-based devices, and then more recently the Alexa presentation language, APL, as we'll see. The display templates, as we see here, are simplified, and here's one that a customer has used to display some plain text with different fonts. Now with APL, you can see you can get a much richer experience. You can put graphs. You can kind of put elements on the screen wherever you like. Think of it like CSS, cascading style sheets, where you'd have rectangles and blocks, if you will, frames and containers. And then the styling of those is up to you. OK, so as we think about getting into the code project itself, this is a project that's written in Node.js JavaScript. And it's a big project. So there's a lot of, it's too much for one code file. It would be thousands of lines long. So I've broken it up into about 10 files. Some with different kind of classes of functions and categories of functions, as we'll see. One main concept to be aware of before we get started is this idea of interceptors. And an interceptor is a special type of function that runs in every case. No matter what you say to Alexa, you have a chance to put an interceptor either before the intent is handled or after the intent is handled. And these can do really interesting things. They can initialize the session, open up connections to a database or an API, maybe clear a session. And then the response can do things like saving, logging, even changing the speech that Alexa says, maybe adding some elements or censoring things. But you'll see the interceptors in the code. And that's what I've done. I've used an interceptor to put APL or put the screen content in a post response. So after the intent, whatever you say to Alexa, you play the game, you guess a state, and then after that, the response interceptors will kick in and detect if the person has a screen first of all, and if they do, go ahead and use APL to put some rich content onto that screen. Okay, so personally, I'm really excited about screens. In my opinion, voice works well when the person knows what they're saying, what they want to say. They know how to use the skill, and most users kind of struggle to get that up to that point. If they're new, they might not know how what things you can say to the skill. Having a screen, I think, provides a chance for a few different patterns of use cases to help the user along. We can remind them. If they're very minimal, you could say, hey, I sent you a list of 20 items. It's probably too long to read out loud, but I put it onto your phone, onto a card maybe, and you can pull it out and look at that for reference. In the case of this game, state games, as we'll see, it's a game where you travel across states. So here's a game that's in progress. We've played 4 turns so far. We're trying to go from Georgia to the West Coast, and we're currently on Louisiana. So we can see our score, we can see where we're at, kind of remember. And this is really helpful too, especially if you come back. Like say you pause for 30 seconds and come back to the skill, and the skill will actually let you do that. It'll come back and resume the game right where you left off. So having a screen there will really help you stay in context. And the other interesting thing I think that we can do, it's got a big impact for training users on different ways to use skills, is the idea of prompts. What do you say next? Ideally, in a perfect world, we would be able to understand and anticipate everything a person's going to say to the skill. We would use our language modeling, our modeling and design skills to put it together the right intents, the right sample utterances, and the right slots. But what I've seen is that's really hard to do. There's just a lot of combinations of ways people say things that we, even if we spend 2 weeks trying to capture those and watch humans using our skill, you still are going to miss some things. So in certain cases, if you have a kind of a fixed path you want to go on, like this one is just name states, I think it really helps to have prompts. And a prompt could be, in this case, it's just really, what are the available states next? You can see here from Louisiana, based on the game I've played, the only 2 states I could jump to next would be Arkansas or Texas. So seeing those there certainly should help me say a valid thing next. I'm not going to say, Michigan, for example. But prompts could be much bigger. The prompts could be totally different intents. Like, did you know there's actually a phrase called leaderboard, which will take you to a different intent called leaderboard? Or, don't forget, you can always say cancel or help or stop. Of course, all skills have that. So I think having prompts available on the screens, in some part of the screen, will help the user to learn how to use the skill effectively. And in the case of a business setting, they might use the prompts as they train up on the skill and get used to it. And then after some time, they're really an expert and they don't need the screen anymore because they know all the paths and the things to say. So think about different ways we can use prompts. I'll show you a few as we get into this skill here. In the case of gaming skills with screens, I love the ideas of showing your score and showing leaderboards. Right? There's a lot of games for Alexa where you play the game, you get a score. Oftentimes these are quiz games or things like that, turn-based games. But where it really gets sort of interesting and it brings in all the other players is the idea of a leaderboard. How did you do according to everyone else? And the Jeopardy skill does this. You answered 5 out of 6 questions correct. That puts you in the 90th percentile. Congratulations. Or maybe you got the top score of all time or the top score of this month. So using a database in the back end, as this skill does, you'll be able to track sort of a history of all the scores and then use that to tell the user how they did in context to everybody else. And I think leaderboards also help encourage repeat use. Right? There's nothing more interesting, I think, to me to see, you scored well on the leaderboard, maybe you got the top score. And maybe you come back a week later and now you're bumped to number 3 because somebody beat your score. Boy, I would want to go back and play that skill a few more times and try to get the best score again, just like any gamer would. right? And we can even use notifications, a totally different topic, but you could perhaps send a proactive events through the proactive events API, send a notification to the person's device, hey, you fell down on the leaderboard, somebody's playing better than you, come back and play again, right? So this leaderboard here that I'll show you, what I've done is I've gone and created a second table in DynamoDB. Many skills already have an initial table, the table that's tracking one record for each user session that comes in. Each user stores their whatever you want to remember. But the leaderboard is a different type of table altogether. It's a way to track history, if you will, or at least a subset of the history, the top scores. And then with this table, it's in the AWS cloud, so we can easily imagine creating a website, for example, that points to the same table. Right? You could have a companion page where we direct people to go look at the web page, or a mobile app, or other kinds of channels. Maybe a weekly email with what the current leaderboard is. You can see here this one. It's got a ranking, of course, and it's got the scores. In this case, lower score is better. 7 hops to go from Georgia to California. And one kind of challenge we have here is how do we really identify the user? You see UID 123 got the top score, but my name is Robert. That's not really how I think of my name. At the minimum, all users who use a skill have this sort of anonymous user ID, which we can use to identify them. And what I've done in these cases, I chopped off the last 6 characters, and I grabbed those only. So those 6 characters you see here, like UID 444, that's just the end of the user ID. Right? If we, maybe to extend this skill, we would call to the permissions model, the permissions APIs, and ask them, hey, can I please have your full name so I can address you properly, so you can appear in the leaderboard with your name. That's possible too. All right. So let's jump into the code, alexa.design/code sample. I'll do a demo of the skill, and then we'll add a bunch of features to it, shall we? Let's just do a refresh. OK, here I am in the developer console. And the skill is called state purchase. Do a quick tour of how it works. State purchase or state games. Yeah, and within this skill, there's a few different games you can play. Later on today, you'll see in skill purchasing, I'm going to cover how we would model different games that you can purchase and add games to this. It's sort of a game engine. So the first game that's free and default is Coast to Coast. There's also a game called Bigger Pop. In Bigger Pop, you'd go from a small population state to a bigger population state. In all the games, though, you're pretty much naming states. Right? And by the way, this doesn't have to be states. This could really be any state in the sort of academic sense, meaning a country, a territory. You could have Africa. We discussed the countries of Africa could easily be replaced here, or Europe. And those would make good playing boards as well. But you name a state, you say go to the state, and you just keep doing that according to the various rules of the various games. You can ask, hey, what can I buy? I want to, curious about buying, upgrading to in-skill purchasing products. And there's also a leaderboard intent, as you see here. You can say, show me the leaderboard, and it'll show you maybe the default leaderboard, or the leaderboard for whatever game you played last. Or you can even ask for a certain leaderboard. Right? And this one table we'll be able to track the leaderboards for multiple different games. Right? And then the slot type here, the state is just a Amazon.us state, but this is where you could easily replace it with a custom slot of countries in your continent, for example. All right, let's give it a try. So open state purchase.
Hello, and welcome back. This is State Games. Which game would you like to play? I recommend Coast to Coast.
OK. So I scroll down into the APL section, Alexa Presentation Language, and here we see that the screen, there's already some APL built here. There's a screen that's got a title. There's a big image. This is just like a logo, if you will. Just going to drive home the point that you're traveling across states. And then we have 2 little panels here, which I call Stats 1 and Stats 2. And these are general purpose panels, as we'll see, that we can use in all kinds of interesting ways. Launch count 14, last visit, certain number of time ago. Maybe I won't say those out loud, but it's kind of interesting to look at, isn't it? So let's play coast to coast.
Great. Let's review the rules of coast to coast. Start by naming an Atlantic Ocean state. Continue naming states until you get to the Pacific. The fewer states you can name, the better. Tell me your first state. You could try Florida, New Jersey, or Massachusetts.
All right, so I think we got the rules of the game, starting in the Atlantic Ocean. And here we see these two stats panels here are going to help us play the game, right? So if we could play with our eyes closed, it would be a bit harder, I think, but it's nice to see the hints here. And by the way, this is something that you might tune in later today to see how you'd build in-scale products. Maybe we could hide those hints and charge you for them, buy a 5-pack of hints, right? But for now, they're just there for free, and we can look at them and see. So what do you think we should start with? Let's start with North Carolina. Kind of like those Tar Heels. I think they're going to do well next year.
You said North Carolina. Next?
Next state.
You said Tennessee. Next?
Arkansas.
You said Arkansas.
Now you see what's happening internally. Is that the game engine is letting us, recognizing the states. It's kind of building up an array of history, the path, and it's also looking at this data structure that we have of the states and what they border, and it's providing a list of hints, possible future states. Right, and this to me, this idea of hints, of prompting the user, pretty powerful. It's, the other day I was doing my taxes and I used TurboTax, and they use a similar kind of a UI where, you're answering questions, you're going through a long series of about 50 steps, but at each point there's always about 3 or 4 options that you can pick from on the screen. Nothing too overwhelming, and seeing it right there also helps you to say the right thing. Okay, so there is a quick path across the country in 7 hops. I'm going to try the. At this point, you can choose either Texas or Oklahoma. If you see, I'm going to try the Oklahoma path. Let's see how we do. Hopefully, I'll get on the leaderboard. Oklahoma, New Mexico.
You said New Mexico. Next?
Okay. Arizona.
You said Arizona. Next? Hip, hip, hooray! California ends the game. Your score is 7. Would you like to play again?
All right. Okay. We did. We got a score of 7. That's nice. I don't see any leaderboard there. I just sort of hear the result. Let's see a few other features, see if we see anything on the screen. Let's just say help. We can always say help at different points.
You asked for help. You can say stop,
or you can say stop or play coast to coast. Okay, nothing really showing there. Let's ask for the leaderboard.
Here's the leaderboard.
Here's the leaderboard, but it really didn't show anything. So this skill is missing a few things. Let's try one more. Let's say, what can I buy?
You own Bigger Pop. You can purchase small
states,
I heard leaderboard or hints pack.
So I heard that I own one product and there's other products I can buy. All right, so let's go ahead and see how you use APL to add these. So I'll take you through some of my design thinking as I tried to, picture this and build this skill. First thing to note is, big projects like this, break up your code into multiple different code files. And in Node.js, it's pretty easy to do this. You just say, const APL and then require a separate apl.js file. And then we can just use the functions within. Inside the functions, you would have, inside each file, you could just say module.exports equals, and then an object with the various functions. And that's how we tie them together. That'll make your life easy. And what's more is you can easily have some generic files and some custom files. So go ahead and look through this project. The product handlers, for example, very generic. You could use that to implement in-scale purchasing. apl.js may be the same way. Now, if you're new to APL, a quick overview of what it is. Let's start with the document itself. There's this big JSON document. Let's bump it up a bit. And it's not a code file as such. It's really just like a JSON, a configuration document, if you will. And it's defining the layout of the different items in here. So you see we have resources, we have styles, just like normal style sheets where you define colors and fonts and things. The layouts, I didn't implement that. That's an optional feature. There's a main template. Main template can have parameters that come in. And as we'll see soon, what we can do as developers is pass in a whole bunch of data to this APL document. And the data will customize how it renders. So in this case, the document has a title. It's got a picture, and then it's got 2 stats boxes on the side. Depending on which part of the game I'm in, I'm going to totally customize those and put different things in those spots by passing into the payload data. Right, and then underneath there, you have a big hierarchy of items, as we see here. Frames, different types of items that we want to get used to. Here's a little tip I found as you learn in the how to build these things. And there's a tool to help you craft these as well, but I like to be old school and just build them right within the text editor here. So think of there's containers and frames. A frame is the larger one. The frame will contain one item, and that item might probably be a container. And then underneath there, you might have more containers. The frame is what has fonts and colors and background colors. The container doesn't have styles as such. It's just got items, that flow in different directions. And then underneath here, you might have text elements. Right? Here's an image, another frame. And here we have the first stats box, and it's got a title and a list of possible values. So the title is there as a first item, just so you know, and it's got a separate style that makes it stand out with a different color, and then an array of items. So that's kind of the document. That doesn't change. That stays still. And on top of that, we inject data. So here's my APL.js file, and it's an interceptor. After the skill runs, usually there's a lot of session attributes that have been updated, like what state you went to, what are the new states that you could go to, what your current score is, and so forth. And we can grab the session attributes and pull those in, and then use those to look at where are we, what is our context, what can we tell the user. So looking through this code here, welcome to State Games, there's a title, there's an image, and then there's the 2 stat boxes, title 1, array 1, title 2, and array 2. And those correspond to these 2 things on the right here. Now, all I do here is I just branch according to the different types of requests that come in. So yeah, back to my design thinking. When I first thought of building this, I had initially imagined, I took out a pencil and paper and I designed about 8 different screens. And I realized, wait, this game doesn't need that many screens. You probably could get by with 1 screen. You want that map there. The map is sort of an aid, a visual help. So let's just leave that there. The initial one had a logo with some more colors on it, but now let's just leave it there. You always want a title, and then we can just toggle and put different things into the boxes on the right. So you might get by with just using 1 APL screen and with a dynamic way to update the values in there. So make it simple as possible. If it's a launch request, see this block here, means launch request is the user just said, open the skill. Then we're going to put that custom image there. As you see there, we're going to say, we're going to tell the user what the launch count is.
Talk to you later. Hello,
Right.
and welcome
And we're also
back.
going to put in the last
This is
visit.
State
We measure
Games.
that as
Which
a
game would you like to
difference in
play?
time
I
between the
recommend
other
Coast
visit.
to Coast.
All right, so, and that's pretty much it. If it's a launch request, we'll show that thing. Otherwise, we'll just show the title State Games and the empty map. And if it's playing, if the game state is playing, meaning you're playing one of these games, you're always going to have a path of states you've been to. You're always going to have a list of valid next states. And we have helpers elsewhere, other interceptors that calculate those and put those into the state list and the valid next states. And you probably saw those as we were playing. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's make a help handler, shall we? And we'll respond to when somebody says help. We'll give them some options. So I'm going to recycle some code. If the request type is a intent request, and this is just like the normal handlers that we put into our main functions in our code. And let's go look at that and grab some of that code. So it's an intent request and a choose game intent. And the intent name we're looking for is Amazon.help intent. Okay, in that case, we can put different context there. So let's reuse these placeholders here. The title will just be help, something like that. The big title, the title, what do we want to put in these other sections here? Maybe we'll put the user ID and some options. Right, to get them ready to think about their identity on the leaderboard, let's just tell them, hey, by the way, this is what your user ID is. And we can get that pretty easily. That should come in to us as part of the request that we're processing. So it's going to come in as the handler input.request envelope.session. .user ID. Okay. Now, what's the problem here? The user ID is incredibly long. It would never fit on the page. So we have to chop it off a little bit. Let's just do a JavaScript slice and take the last 6 characters. JavaScript is so cool. We'll show for the user ID. And then for the second one, let's just put in some options. And the user said help, so maybe it's their first time, they don't really know what to say. So just an array of various options. Things that they might want to say. You can say play coast to coast. Another array element could be, stop. Or another one could be leaderboard. Simple enough. Okay. Fix this typo. Okay, so I think we're in good shape. Why is this complaining? Oh, WebStorm. Okay, yeah, I understand why. Here we go. All right, so let's deploy that. Here's my little deployment console. So I have a nice little bash script called Lambda that's going to zip the whole project and upload it to the Lambda function up in the cloud. And then we can try it out. Okay. So we can do a shorthand and a one-shot. Ask, maybe just stop what's running. Ask state purchase
Talk to you
for
later.
help. Live coding, please work.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
There was a problem with the skills response. Okay, all right, this is good. This is actually what I wanted to do so we can practice debugging. I remember. So this, and here it is. It's an array, and I forgot to make it an array. It's got to have square brackets, of course. It's an array with one element. I think that should do it. Luckily, when you develop locally and you have these scripts to deploy, you could certainly deploy with the CLI command as well, same kind of thing, but it makes it pretty quick to develop. Ask.
You asked for help.
All right.
You can
there we go.
say
So the help
stop.
display, there's my title.
Play coast to coast.
There's my user ID. It's a long string. It happens to end in FYOIJJI. Okay, that's what I'll go with. And there's the 3 options. So now the user, if a new user would know like a few different things that they could possibly say to this skill. Cool. All right, we're on a roll. Let's do the what can I buy? Shopping intent. That's another type of intent. So we're going to recycle the same kind of block. If you build a skill with in-skill purchasing, you should always have always answer the question, hey, what can I buy? Make a title there. And let's see, what should we do? How about If you tune in later, you'll see when I talk about the in-skill purchasing, we attach these sort of virtual digital products to our skill, and then they're not bought yet, but as they discover them and buy them, then they'll become owned and owned by the users of the skill. So there's kind of two buckets, isn't there? There's available products and there's the products that I've already purchased. So let's do available as a title, and you own. Okay. Now what are we going to put in here? Hopefully an array. And not a static array. So what I've done in another part of the code, I have an interceptor that gives those to us automatically. And they're part of the session attributes. So there's one called available items. And there's another one called purchased items. Right? And the pre-processing interceptor goes and makes a call out to the Alexa in-skill purchasing service and determines those once when they launch the skill. So they're sort of in the session from that point on. And we should be able to pick those off the attributes and display them. And it's just, they're already in an array format, a list of items. OK. Look good? No problems? OK, here we go. Another live coding test. Let's deploy that and give it a whirl. Oh, and by the way, on this console here, we could test with a real Echo Show for sure. This particular skill is kind of designed for one of those larger screens, but definitely test it on the smaller screens too, or make a plan for how you'd like a small round hub. But for now, let's go for the large hub. This medium hub is the older Echo Show, and the large hub is the newer one. When you toggle there to bring up the other simulator, it'll reset your session. That's fine. So we have a new session. I'll just say ask state purchase. What can I buy?
You own bigger pop. You can purchase small states,
live coding.
leaderboard, or hints pack.
I think the array is there. It's getting 3 objects that are available and 1 that I own. And of course, what we can, to fix those, they're coming in an array, but there's a nested array. There's actually some complex objects here. So we can do our JavaScript magic on this. We can do a map, right? And when I discover these map and reduce and filter functions in JavaScript, they're really powerful. The way they work is like this. So we're taking an array of complex objects, and we're going to go through one by one and create a new array of simpler objects that we can define however we want. In this case, it's just the item.name. Each one had a name sub-element that we want to pick off. All right. The fat arrow, another cool JavaScript thing. Right, that's a good one to throw around just, and you're talking casually, hey, fat arrow, right? They'll know you're a serious developer at that point. All right, let's go ahead and try that.
You own bigger pop. You can purchase small states, leaderboard, or hints pack.
OK. Sorry, I got a little too carried away. Let's just be really clear on the live coding here. So the way the map things work, if you want to have no errors at all, you can really explicitly define what you're trying to pull out from the map. And item.name. Do I have too many things in here? All right, you know what? I'm going to cheat. I actually have the solution at the very bottom here. Let's just, for the sake of time, go and pull that in. Okay. So we have a title, overall a big title, then we have the two stats blocks, products you own and products that are available. And hopefully the map, I think, will pull them in correctly. All right, let's give it a try. We'll deploy this again to Lambda, and then we'll open the skill.
You own Bigger Pop.
Hey, all right,
You
very
can
good.
purchase small
So
states.
it pulled those out of the session attributes.
leaderboard,
We
or
own
hints
a
pack.
product called Bigger Pop, and what's available is small states, leaderboard, and hints pack. Same APL component that we used previously for the state list and for the prompts for guesses that you can do. But now we're just repurposing that with different data. Okay, cool. All right, the leaderboard. Let's talk about the leaderboard. How do we show that? There is a leaderboard table I've created. Let me just bring that up here. So I created a second table in Dynamo. There's an Ask State Games as a default table that's attached to the skill. Then I have another one called Ask State Games Leaderboard. And I've been thinking a lot, like, how would you really model a leaderboard? There's a lot of different ways to do it. One way would be to create just to store a history object of every single interaction with the skill, every game that completes successfully, and somehow like write a query, like almost like a SQL statement to go through and filter on the game coast to coast, sort by the lowest score up to the highest score. Show me, in return, project the names of the person and what the score is and maybe what their states are. That could be done. DynamoDB doesn't work quite that way. There's no SQL interface, right? And what's more is if you have to do a big scan, if you have like 1,000 or 10,000 history records in that table, that scan can start to be a little bit expensive. You have to be aware of that. So there's a way to create secondary indexes that will help you to narrow that down and to focus on just the records you want, like sort the top 5 results, for example. But that's a talk for another day. For now, the way I model this one, I actually just create one single record here. And the record itself is sort of a placeholder for the top scores. And you can go in here and see the scores. So there's about 6 scores in there now. Right, and here's one. There's a list of 7 states. This person has the top score. They took the Texas route, not the Oklahoma route. Interesting. And you can see their timestamp and their user ID. Okay, so that's basically the leaderboard essentially, as we model it in one single record. So to handle the leaderboard intent, let's do the same kind of thing. We're going to just display the leaderboard on the right. I think we'll display the leaderboard. What I want to do is, on this first block, display what are the top 5 scores, maybe the score itself, 7 being the best for this game, and then the 6-character user ID. And then in the second panel, what I want to display is, if you're curious, what was that optimal route? What was the states that won the game and got that leaderboard, so that people can see who those are. So let's copy the overall block again and create a handler for a leaderboard. So my skill has that leaderboard intent. And so the first one is going to have top scores. So what did we say? We wanted to do user and score, I think. Now let's do score and user. We'll display both of those. Maybe a colon separating them. Okay, the array, we'll have to think about that for a moment. And the second one will be best path. And this will also have an array associated with it. All right, so let's model this. So I have this idea, I have this leaderboard concept. It's in the session attributes. There's also a leaderboard handler. You see this leaderboard function itself. And by the way, it displays on the card already, so we can maybe reuse some of that code. So here's a tool called TestFlow that lets us run unit tests right on our laptop. There's a test in there already called leaderboard. Oh, it didn't like my arrays in APL. It's live coding, so let's just keep that happy, make sure it's valid code, and then try to see what the leaderboard currently looks like, not in APL, but in just a card format. Okay, so it's there. There's a leaderboard. There's a user ID. This one even shows you how long ago it was, and then the optimal score. So we can lift some of that code, I think, from the leaderboard handler. And by the way the leaderboard works, in this case, I open up that record, I load in the existing array, and then I append the new score to the bottom of the array, and I simply ask the system to resort the array. We can debate later if that's optimal, but it certainly gets the job done for these small scale cases. All right, here we go. Get leaderboard. And what it does, if it doesn't have a leaderboard there, it'll add a new empty one. Otherwise, it will call to DynamoDB. Right? And what it's doing is, this is just some standard AWS SDK stuff. It's going to call the secondary table called leaderboard and get.client, get basically what I'm asking for. Query that table for the ID of game for that one record and pull it back, and then we can look at it as rec.item. Sound good? All right, so let's, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and just pop the code in. We know it works from the bottom. Because you probably don't want to see me type all this and have typos. But I'll walk you through what it does, and then we can have a look at it. Then we'll do one last play of the game. Okay, so here's our leaderboard intent handler. Let's make that active and live. If it's a leaderboard intent, get the proper game name. The game name could be something they say, or it could be something we infer from the previous game that they've played, or it could be the default coast to coast. We go and get that leaderboard, get the array from Dynamo, load it in there. And here we go. This should look familiar now. There's the big title, leaderboard for the game, score and user. Now here's the array one, and it's a little bit complex here what I'm doing here. So what I'm doing is taking this leaderboard scores, slicing only the first 5, right? We could have, 20 different items. It's probably a lot. Just the top 5 get on the leaderboard. And then for each item, go ahead and determine the user ID, that last 6 characters of it. And then do a comparison. Say, if the user ID of the current leaderboard as it is, if it has a match to me, the current user who's currently playing the game, then flag that. That's basically, that's me in that leaderboard. I want to flag that, identify that as a special record so that stands out. And here's the best part of it all. We're bringing back a tag from the 1990s, an HTML tag, the underline tag, and that'll put an underline around it. So shall we give it a try? Let's give it a whirl. Let's deploy this thing. And we'll play the game, and then we'll hopefully see our leaderboard.
Talk to you later.
Okay, I'm going to go through this game quick, and then we'll see if we got onto the leaderboard.
Back. This is State Games. Which game would you like to play? Great. Let's review the rules of Coast to Coast. Start by naming.
North Carolina.
You said North Carolina.
Tennessee.
You said Tennessee. Next.
This would be a fun road trip, wouldn't it?
You said Arkansas. Next. You said Oklahoma. Next.
New Mexico.
You said New Mexico. Next.
Arizona.
You said Arizona.
And California.
Next. Ta-da! California
okay,
ends the game. Your
What's the
score
leaderboard,
is 7.
please?
Would you like to play? Here is the leaderboard.
Hooray! There we are. We're tied. We're in the top of the leaderboard. We've done 2 top scores. They're underlined. There's our best path with Oklahoma. So hopefully that helps. Take a look at the code, see if you can use some of these functions and concepts in your own skill. And follow me on Twitter. Thank you so much, @Rob McCauley, and I'll see you at another event. Cheers, everyone. Bye.